Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope we're doing well, and today we're doing a box office preview for this upcoming weekend, which sees the release of Mickey 17, which is expected to take the #1 spot very easily right now. Box Office Theory projecting a $21 million opening weekend for the movie, which is getting a lot of, let's just say, mixed to negative reviews, more so negative that I have seen, at least from people in my own space. And even over on Criticalist right now, only 4 reviews are over there, 3 of which are decent scores, and 1 of which is a heinous score, which is not a good sign early on for this movie, especially since right now the reporting is that this movie cost over $100 million to make. You add to that the fact that the film has been delayed in its release, and so you could potentially have, a little bit of a higher marketing cost associated with that. Whenever these delays happen, that can sometimes be the case. And so right now, Mickey 17 is not really expected to do that much as far as any financial returns are expected. Now, of course, we'll have a full box office breakdown this coming Sunday once the full numbers are out. But let's just say right now it's looking like a pretty rough start for a movie with that kind of budget, right? If the budget ends up being a lot lower, but again, right now the reports are, according to an interview with Bong Joon-ho, he himself, the director, mentioned it costing about $118 specifically million to make the movie before marketing cost. If that is indeed the case, that is not a good look for this, especially with the word of mouth not being very good as of right now, based off of the earliest reactions that we are seeing. This is, though, expected to take the #1 spot, which means Captain America Brave New World is going to drop to the #2 spot, which really can't be all that surprising. The film has had no real competition over the last few weeks and has been tracking continuously behind the box office of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which had a similar release back in 2023. And though it has been able to start beating the movie in the day-to-day numbers, it is still tracking behind by about 13% domestically and probably closer to 20% globally. And so right now, Brave New World is not doing the kinds of numbers it would need to do that much better than what was being expected, earlier on. And right now, we can still say that this movie will probably struggle to get to that $400 million plus mark at the actual box office. And again, we'll talk about those numbers, going into it and just exactly what we can expect between these two movies and what we could expect going forward. But those are really the only big movies coming out is Mickey 17. So let's just go further down the list here. Paddington Peru expected the #3 spot there, 12% drop, so pretty strong hold off there. Dogman expected to get an 8% drop, also very, very strong. And then we have a follow-up to Last Breath, 50% drop there. Can't say that, not surprising. Another week for The Monkey, 42% drop there. And then you also have Rule Breakers from Angel Studios, $3 million. That's a pretty standard fare, low single-digit number for Angel Studios. It tends to be the kind of numbers that they do. They just are not getting anywhere close to the numbers that I'm sure that they would really like to be seeing. I don't think you're just ever going to see a Sound of Freedom type situation again until they kind of, capture lightning in a bottle again, like they were able to do that one time. And then even Mufasa the Lion King is still hanging around after all of these weeks, right? And I mentioned before that Mufasa was one that was able to leg out quite a bit and was actually able to cross $700 million worldwide. So again, kudos to them for being able to leg out as long as they were. No one expected the film to do as well as it did. Now, it still did terrible in comparison to the first Lion King, quote unquote, live action from 2019, right? That film making billions and billions of dollars, whereas this one, capping out at $700 million. And also add to that a huge budget for the movie. And on paper, based on the numbers we have, the numbers that have been reported, it's made its money back and it's made a little bit of profit. But as we all know, Disney is never very forthcoming when it comes to how much they've actually spent on their movies. We have evidence and proof of that in the case of the MCU, which is why we're able to speak a little bit more confidently that when it comes to Brave New World, we know that film did not cost $180 million to make. And again, if you are still buying and believing that number, I'm sorry, I got a bridge to sell you to nowhere, because that is how gullible you are at this point. The evidence is just so clearly there that this movie costs so much more than that. I would not also be surprised then if Mufasa cost more than the $200 million that has been reported. Going over to Box Office Pro, they have very similar numbers here, a little bit more, I guess, sheepish on the numbers for Mickey 17. They're projecting 12 to 16 million. Based on these early reactions, I would not be surprised if Box Office Pro ends up being a little bit closer. in being correct here. Captain America, Brave New World, $7 to $8 million, so about the same. Last Breath for them is getting the number 3 spot with $3 to $4 million. Box office report, the last of the prognosticators to go through here. Mickey 17, for them, they're also expecting $22 million, so very similar methodology here as Box Office Theory. Captain America, Brave New World, $8.2 million, and then $4 million for Last Breath. So again, some pretty similar numbers there overall. As I mentioned, over on Critic List, we have Mickey 17 with right now, that is Blaine, shout out to Blaine, who gave this film a 19% heinous score. He usually likes some pretty bad movies too, and so I just want to put it out there that if even Blaine doesn't like this movie, then guess what? It's probably not that great of a film, right? Normally his good movies that he likes are not good, and if he does not like a movie, then it speaks volumes. But as you can see, the other reviews that we've gotten so far, 40% decent, 54% decent, and then a 50% decent score. So it's not looking like this thing is going to be kind of lighting anything on fire, or really motivating anything. A lot of the things I'm kind of hearing very similar, similar criticisms of, has a lot to do with the character that Mark Ruffalo plays. Just sounds like he is very annoying in the movie, which might very well fit the fact that he is annoying in real life, but people don't want to necessarily be actually annoyed in a movie if they're trying to be entertained and going in with a sci-fi comedy in mind. And again, obviously, I will withhold my own judgment until I've actually seen the movie, though this is not really motivating me to speed that up in any way. Going over to the comparison between Brave New World and Ant-Man Quantumania, as you can see, it did start to turn towards the favor of Brave New World on the second Monday, right, where it was able to edge out Quantumania's numbers. Now, remember, these are not adjusted for inflation, and so I imagine that it probably is not nearly or probably might even be still in the camp of Quantumania on some of these days because of that. Even though it's only been a couple of years, we know that inflation has gone up quite a bit over the last couple of years, and so that has to be taken into account. Ticket price changings too, but hey, we go based on the numbers here. We call balls and strikes, and according to the second Monday numbers, that is when we saw here Brave New World start to take the edge. Now, this continued on into through the third Wednesday, and I imagine that the third Thursday will also be very similar. As you can see, only $770,000 was made by the third Thursday of Quantumania. What's will be interesting to see is where the weekend ends up, right? So right now, you are seeing, those single digits, $7 to $8 million being projected as far as what they think the movie is going to make. If you go to the weekend comparison, or rather just to the weekend numbers and the weekend drops for Quantumania, as you can see, this film actually ended up making about $7.1 million, and so we actually could potentially see Quantumania once again take the reins as far as total number in a given weekend, with that 44% drop off being the number to look at. So we all know that Brave New World had a 68% drop week 1 to week 2, had a much stronger hold in its week 2 to week 3 drop, and so will it be able to continue to stay and play ball, at least domestically, with Quantumania's numbers? We'll have to wait and see, but let's just say it's still tracking far enough behind where that movie was. I mean, $198 million is where Quantumania ended up being by the end of that weekend. If we go ahead and just go over to, normally Box Office Theory has the total domestic through that given time. Let's see if they have it over here. That does look like, they do. There it is. Total gross, $176 million. Okay, I was looking at the wrong movie there. So yeah, $175 million is what they are expecting right there. Again, we like to do things live here, keeps things honest. So yeah, that's still $25 million off from $200 million. And so this movie, even though it is making some ground up, if you really compare these numbers and look at them, you'll notice it's very, very small victories, right? 4.4 to 3.6 million, 6.8 to 5.9, 3.5 to 3.1. The weekend numbers especially are a lot closer, and so we're talking about bare victories for the Captain America numbers, in the weekend totals, and so we can expect something similar this weekend. All we can definitely say though is that it's not going to be anywhere close to $200 million as Quantumania was by the end of this weekend, and this film is still going to fall even further behind. Again, we're talking about the movie potentially not even reaching $400 million, and even if it does, barely going over that. So when you have a movie not beating Quantumania, which already had a very bad box office, was already seen as a box office loser, and then you're putting out and still believing this $180 million production budget, even with that lower number, even with that being the case, if you honestly believe that, this film still ends up being a box office flop. Now, we know that it's not a flop, it's actually a catastrophe because this film costs a lot more. than what is being said right now. What's also said to have cost a lot, though, is Mickey 17. So $118 million production budget. That means that we're talking about a break-even point of between $295 and $354 million. So if you're making, I think right now the estimates for the worldwide global total is between like 40 and 60 million. If that's all you're making in your opening, that is not very, very good for that budget, right? So if this was a lower budget sci-fi movie from Bong Joon-ho, right, okay, that would actually be some pretty good numbers. But based off of what we know, based at least on what's been reported, those are really, really, really bad numbers there. So again, Mickey 17 not looking to really be anything box office wise to speak of. Last Breath, at least as the last update of the numbers, has made so far about $10.2 million. So about $30 million in the red. So has a potential chance to maybe make money, but I would say it's making so little money at this point that it's going to cut that maybe by about $5 million, and it's probably going to still end up being a box office flop. Not the biggest of flops in the world, but still a flop nonetheless. The Monkey continuing to add to its overall profits, $40.5 million worldwide, $5.1 million in net gain profits compared to its budget. So again, as I mentioned before, this film is going to not only have paid for itself, paid for the budget of the future film that they'll likely make for this franchise, and even the marketing for that future film. So that's always a good place that you want to be. Based off of a reported budget, based off of an estimated budget of $300 million. And again, I think that's still being quite conservative in the estimates there. This movie right now is still $288 million in the red. $345 million is what it's made so far worldwide, as of the last report from Box Office Mojo. Now, I will say, right, we obviously try to keep things fair here, so let's go ahead and put in the numbers here of that fake number of $180 million. Again, we've already proven why that number is not likely and should not be believed. According to that, if that was indeed the case, guess what? The film is still $100 million in the red if that is indeed the case. So we're talking about a best case scenario of, $50 to $75 million in losses. So if that's your best case scenario, I'm sorry, but to anyone to try to argue that this is a good sign for this movie or for Marvel going forward is just not being, is just not being honest, right? Now, $300 million seems much more likely. It's very much in line with what they've spent on every other film over the last several years. So with that number, again, closer to $300 million in the red, sounds about right. And if we remember and remind ourselves, hey, guess what? They actually spent way, way more on these other films and way over $300 million even on those movies. And with the reports at the time, right, from World of Real, having reported $350 to $400 million in actual total spend before, right, we're talking just about production budget, not marketing, not taking into account the cuts that the studio gets versus the theaters after everything is said and done. We're talking about a film that likely, we could arguably say, over $300 million in total losses this year. So one of the biggest box office flops this year and probably of the last few years. But right now, those are numbers as they stand. Are you planning on seeing Mickey 17? Does it look good to you? Do you think that it's going to be any good? Again, I obviously have been dealing with some illness, and so I was not able to go and see it last night. I was able to hang out on the Geeks and Gamers Locals channel, though, and we were able to watch Major League, so I got to see the second half of that movie. Had never seen it before, and overall, I was actually pretty entertained by it. So make sure you support the Geeks and Gamers Locals community because it is a good time. Always content over there, and always a lot of fun. So anyway, your thoughts on Mickey 17, your thoughts on Last Breath, or any of the other films mentioned or not mentioned here, let me know in the comment section down below. If you like this video, smash that like button. Loud that fire button over on Odyssey. Smash the rumble button as well. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day. We are in the midst of Lent, right? Lent just started this week with Ash Wednesday. So please, take this opportunity to grow in holiness. Hope you have a blessed Lenten journey. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illick and Miss Modern Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Modern Muses. Also to my Subscribestar people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing, and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.